Welcome to Leaving Six Figure Stories, where we interview amazing individuals who left careers, being attorneys, all kinds of things, all kinds of stuff to chase their dreams, to capture their goals. And I tell you, this one is a little bit different for me because not only do I know this individual, he was my partner, and I was able to watch him just go from that attorney to this businessman to this entrepreneur and so many other things, which you guys will find out here in a minute. But I'm more excited than normal because this story I feel like I was part of some of it. And then I got a chance to sit back as a spectator and watch it now, and it's still going. So it's a cool thing. So Matt Teter, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, John. I appreciate it. And it's a pleasure to talk to you always, not just, this is a very formal version of us having a conversation, but whether it's texting you or calling you or asking something or reaching out to you or saying happy birthday or happy holidays, I love talking to you. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I would say that we're both busy, so sometimes these are the forums where you get to catch up, which is crazy, but that's just the way life goes, right?
It's okay. Yeah.
So I know the story, but I wanted to share. I know a little bit, but the big story that I think is amazing is you were an attorney, which takes a long time to become an attorney, a lot of school, a lot of hard work and just drive and determination and everything, and probably not a lot of people can do it, and you did it. And then you decided that, you know what, that's not the track I want to take. So I'd love for you just to kind of share, a little bit about yourself and that journey, because I think it's really remarkable in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think the way I got into it explains a lot of the way that I probably didn't stay in it, right? So I played high school baseball, college baseball, and I was a psychology major in undergrad at McDaniel College, and I wanted to go into sports psychology, right? I was watching guys walk around. Behind me is Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant on this wall, but on that wall is Tiger Woods, and I was actually watching people walk around. You can't see it in that part of my office, but Tiger Woods, right? And his sports psychologist. I'm like, oh, that's what an awesome job, right? I'll do that. So I took the generic GRE, right? You need to do that, and I scored in the 95th percentile. And I applied to sports psychology programs, and they were full. At the time, there was not an available slot for me to go into that. So I was having a conversation of, what am I going to do? Am I going to go? Obviously, I'm going to keep working. What's the next step? And the dean of Rutgers Law School, Camille Andrews, called me and said, is this Matt? And I said, yeah. And she says, Dean Andrews, my husband is Congressman Andrews, and we worked together with the state of New Jersey to launch a pilot program for Rutgers in which students that scored in the top 90% or whatever it was in the GRE and the GMAT, right, would not have to take the LSAT, and you can apply to law school. So I never took the LSAT, right? And I got this call, which is what the entrance exams for law school. I got this call saying you scored in the top percentile, you should apply to law school. And I'd never really thought about it, never thought of law school. And I said, well, it kind of seemed like a prank call. I was like, are you sure you're calling the right person? I haven't taken the LSAT. What? She said, yeah. I said, okay, well, let me think about it, right? I'm flattered by this. Let me talk to my parents and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, right, and see, what that is. And she said, well, I sent you the application. It's in your email. I want you to apply today. And okay, so I did. We thought about it, I talked about it, and took the action and applied. And they accepted me the next day. And I didn't have the plans to go. And that, I think a lot of people have there's a whole life plan, right, to be an attorney. And I learned that in law school, because I got there and people were pre-law. People were, they went to schools. John, you probably hung out with some of these people or spent time where they went to school for basically defense, right? Like there's
Poli sci.
criminal defense, poli sci, all these other things, right? To be able to become a police officer or an attorney or work in criminal defense. And there's these, high school programs around, all this kind of stuff. I didn't do any of that, right? I literally had no plan to go. So I
Yeah.
was invited to go. I went. I coached baseball while I was there. I fell in love with a lot of areas of law, whether it was business law or sports law or entertainment law, right? I worked for a criminal defense attorney, a criminal judge. while I was there. And I did pass the bar in 2 states. I took the bar and I passed the bar, became an attorney in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. But they told us a lot that there was a hiring freeze. We had a lot of that language because I graduated in 2009 from law school. And so, 2012 from law school. And the conversation was, there's a hiring freeze, right? There's no jobs. You're not going to go anywhere, right? There's nobody we were in South Jersey, so there's nobody in Philadelphia hiring. Major firms are not bringing on people. There's still a hiring freeze 4 years after their kind of recession. It's going to be tough for you. And that was a lot of the messaging in the school program. So I think that led to a lot of, plus I worked for a criminal defense attorney and who was also a sports agent. And in the middle of the night, one night, he sold his practice, which is his prerogative. It's just we didn't know, right? So I went into work the next morning and my fob didn't work, right? And I went, I called him and he said, oh yeah, we did a deal. It was a great deal for us. And I appreciate that. It's just we weren't informed. So I had kind of internally, they were having that conversation. I never really intended to do it. I started liking it. I had a job I thought I was going to go into and it changed. And it was kind of like, okay, maybe I should look outside of this trajectory that I'm on. And, John, you said to me, leaving, this conversation, your book, your dialogue is people leaving six figures like yourself and so many others to pursue an entrepreneurial career and their passions in their areas. But with all of that, I said it to say, I don't think my mindset was that it was six figures. Number one, I had never made six figures up at that time. I was sitting next to senators' kids and best-selling authors in class, but I felt like a misfit because I was the assistant baseball coach working at a clothing company to make, $30,000-$40,000 to be able to pay my bills. And I didn't have the money. I didn't come from it. I didn't have attorneys in my family. It was kind of that thing. So I didn't have the mindset of this is a multi-million-dollar business, right? Opportunity, or I can do that as an attorney, which is obviously true and real and easy for me to look back on now. It was really like the messaging was nobody's hiring. And then I worked for somebody that sold their business in the middle of the night. So I think my mindset was, who's going to value my skill set outside of, law more than the trajectory that I'm currently on? And that's why it might have been pretty easy, actually, if you think about it, for me to go elsewhere instead of continue to do this.
It's funny when you think about everyone's stories and journeys leaving the careers that they were in. It seems so hard, but when you dissect the pieces like you just did, then you say, oh, I get it. Like, like all the factors you laid out, I'm like, oh, okay. I could see why it maybe wasn't as hard, when you think about it. And now you think about like, oh my God, like I did all that and I left it, like, because maybe if you had mentors, maybe if you had some people to look up to in that environment like you do here, we probably wouldn't be sitting here, which I'm glad that we are. But, that's just kind of how life is, right? When you get mentors, you get the right people behind you, people that are cheering for you, all that stuff matters. So, all right. So you, at some point you decided that you were going to leave the practice or at least look around, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And how was that process? Were you like, did you put like ads out? Were you really looking, or were you kind of just like, if it happens, it happens, like on your journey, like looking for what's next?
Well, I think it's a great question. And this is where, when you think about that, it's directly where I meet you. So it is kind of a funny way of having this conversation. But I did have a mentor, and I was the vice president of a clothing company. We custom men's clothing in Philadelphia. And I had a shoe shine client who bought custom shoes for me. His name's Rob Turner, and he's still my mentor today. I talked to him the other day. And
how is Rob doing?
Rob's doing really well.
He's an amazing guy. Yeah.
Rob is business wise today retired, right? But he is sitting on private boards with him and his wife, and so they're doing very well. They're doing some awesome stuff. So yeah, so Rob was a shoe shine client. Bought custom shoes, bought some clothing from us, and came in almost every day. And I heard him close a $30 million transaction over the phone. And I said, Mr. Turner, what do you do for a living? And he said, well, I'm a vice president of an international technology company, sell software and hardware. And I said, oh, I want to do that. And he said, well, I don't know if you can, but let's have a conversation about it. And back when I drank and smoked a cigar, which I don't do any of that at all anymore. But he said, let's go have a drink. Let's go smoke a cigar at the Union League in Philadelphia, and we'll talk about it. Right. And we talked about what do we want to do and those things. One of the things that's important in this is Rob is an attorney that doesn't practice law.
Oh,
Right.
I didn't think about that.
So he, part of his conversation and helping to, change my mindset was, he's like, well, I don't practice law, right? I'm in business, right? I'm in sales, but I use that skill set here. Have you considered not going into law and using it here? So he helped me, right? So I did have a mentor to help with that mindset. And the story goes, basically, he invited my wife and I to his house in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. We couldn't pay for it. We paid for the flight. He paid for everything else because we couldn't afford it. And I was swimming in his pool overlooking the Pacific Ocean, right? Like 1,000 feet up, right on a cliff, really beautiful house. And he came out and he pulled out a chair and he sat down. He said, okay, Matt, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, Rob, I want to do this. And he goes, yeah, everybody wants to do this. How are you going to do it? And I said, well, you've done it, so you tell me. And he said, well, there's 2 ways to make money in this world. And I said, okay, what are they? And he said, number 1's inherit it. And I go, well, that's not going to happen. We got to go straight to number 2. And he said, I said, what's number 2? And he said, real estate. He said, if you look at ultra high net worth individuals around the world, they either sell or personally own or have a large portion of their portfolio in the real estate business or in real estate holdings. And I said, okay. And during that time, I was actually in the process. I was in the 3rd step of interviewing to launch my own State Farm franchise for insurance.
I did not know
Right.
that.
Yeah. And so
Did
I
not
had
know
gone
that.
through, and because I was doing some research on businesses, and he had mentioned this before. So I was looking at insurance, I was looking at real estate. And once I found out you could own an insurance company and real estate, I went, oh, so that I could do everything in that one, right? And so I asked Rob at that point, I said, so who do you know in real estate? And he said, I know this guy by the name of John Clyde. He said, I was sitting at Mother's Day brunch, and he has a phenomenal wife and kids and a great family. And he's looking for a CEO for his new location for Keller Williams for his real estate office. And I think you should call him.
That's, it's funny now. I know the other side of the story where we were sitting having adult beverages, me and my wife, at Mother's Day, and we met him and his wife, and I don't know, we probably spoke for hours, just about life, and same thing as you, asking what we did, I asked what he did, and all that, and I think he did mention you in the conversation. I don't know why, but it did come. I mean, like, obviously out of the blue, but it was something that led to that. And I think he said he might have someone. I was telling him, I was launching a new company in Washington Township. And I think at some point maybe he mentioned, had this really talented young man that's in his life or something like that. I forgot exactly. Maybe you might even know some of the pieces there. But somehow that intro came. And, it's like when you see, like, you hear it, like, the age and not in real estate, you kind of, and I didn't know any better, right? So I'm thinking, like, this is not going to lead to anything. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like anything you got to, investigate, you got to see if it makes sense and all that. And obviously the rest is history, as they say. But
yeah, that was May of 2013. And we went through the onboarding recruiting process, right? And then in August, I started in 2013, and you had opened 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah, and the cool thing, I mean, we kind of did the journey together, right? If you think about it, like, I was a new OP, even though I was in real estate for 12, 13, 14 years at that point, I still was new to that organization, like, in terms of leadership. I think I was, I think 2011 I started as an OP, and then that opportunity came. I think we launched August of 2000, was it 12?
Yeah, well, we opened the doors officially in August 2013. When I started with you, you had started basically 2 weeks
Well,
or maybe
we
end of
incubate
July,
off of Cherry
right?
Hill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you spent,
yeah.
but up to that point, you had spent over a year. I know that, right? Building, doing those things, right? And then probably the previous 6 months, you had your first location, or 8 months or 9 months, right? Then you moved to that larger location, and I met you in May, where you had the smaller location. We're just moving into what ended up being where we worked every day.
So So let's talk about that. So how was that journey for you? I mean, obviously you know better than anybody. So you went from an attorney now to this field, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was so I my my family's been in sales my entire lives. You know, the sales part of it I think was the most natural piece, right? The language of the advantage of being in law school, right? And having that experience, right? For that is there were weeks in law school where your assignments were to read 600 pages, and that's not a exaggeration, right? If people lawyers listen to this and be like, oh yeah, I mean, I remember, right? They know. So you get really good at consuming a massive amount of information and summarizing it in a short period of time. That's probably one of the biggest skills you take away from a program like that. And you know, I didn't know anything about real estate, so I just had to read, you know, the MREA book and Shift and One Thing and every book that our company has, right? And then go beyond that and just consume information so I could summarize it and turn it into something to sell, right? So I think the sales side and the information to sales side, I had some experience in. And in the first month I was there, we brought on 15 people. So we showed that we could do that, right? When it comes to leadership, there was all kinds of things, you know, thinking back on conversations that we had now, it's embarrassing to think of things I told you that I knew or understood about leading people, because I was a 26-year-old punk kid and I didn't really know anything of what I was saying. And you know, the first thing that's most important in this is that you took a chance on me. You know, you're right. I wasn't experienced. I didn't check the boxes of who you would hire in that role. The second thing for people, I mean, I think you've developed a lot as a leader. This isn't your conversation, but I can tell you I watched a lot of that and I experienced a lot of that, because in the beginning, why I started laughing when you asked me how was that is it wasn't the best in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Um,
Yeah.
and it probably wasn't the best for you either, right?
Yeah.
Because you had somebody that was inexperienced and didn't know what they were doing, but probably had a lot more confidence than I should have had, you know, in what I thought. And I had somebody that was a state trooper that was now a leader that in sometimes was leading me like a state trooper, right? And
I would concur.
so it was definitely, I think it was a challenge on both sides. I've never been that stressed out and challenged in my life in the beginning of that, but everything that stressed me and challenged me to that level has changed me. And that's kind of the hard part of the conversation that you and I have talked about several times about our growth together. And we had really, you know, direct conversations during that time to do that.
Yeah.
But in reflecting on that, you know, the accountability that you had around what you held me to and what you challenged me to do, um, allowed me to be a better coach. It allowed me to see how I could hold other people accountable. It kept me on track for it. And I think one of to me, the paramount moment in the change of our relationship and the shift in my thinking, right? First year I said, you know, I want to make six figures, right? Because I had never made it before. And the first year I made $103,000 total income. Okay. So I'd never made $100,000 in my life. My family wasn't making it. Nobody was making it. First year with you, I made 103,000. You probably remember a couple months into the second year, you took me off site, right, out of our organization to one of our other locations that was closed that day. And you scheduled a meeting, which was basically to talk me through what the next big steps in my life and in our business were going to be. And we spent hours where you helped me outline how I was going to make $250,000 for the first time, right? How I was going to be able to go beyond that, what it was going to look like to propose to my wife, what it was going to look like, right, to fund my own wedding, what it was going to look like to pay off debt, how I was going to buy a house, and you walked me through how to lay all those things out in several hours. And to me, it was the most massive shift in my respect and my relationship for you, because up to that point, there were definitely a lot of times that I questioned whether or not you were just being tough on me like everybody else or whether you cared. And that day I realized you cared the whole time, and you were growing as a leader and I was growing as a leader. And you being tough on me was getting the results we needed to produce what we were working on to build the business that we needed, but it was also building a track record and trajectory for me to be successful. And so I think there's a lot of teaching in that for people about how you grew and how you helped me. There's so many things in there. You know, that
You
was
know,
one. And one other real quick I'll say is,
yeah.
you the best leaders I've ever had in my life that have helped me grow have not just said, go do this, they've done it with me. Right. When I learned how to sell clothing, Anthony Adams, right, literally said, like, okay, I'm going to sell to my clients. And then he rang it up for me at the register. So I got paid on a commission on him training me. And in a lot of ways, you did the exact same thing for me in my career. You went on appointments with me, sat next to me, helped me hire people, and then paid me a bonus on the people that essentially in the beginning you hired.
Yeah.
And that gave me confidence. It was so important that you did those things, right? And spent that time with me that, today I can do some different stuff in my career.
I was just thinking too, you'd be proud to know, and I don't, you might know this, but you might not. I was talking to a group of leaders in Keller Williams, and we were looking at numbers. And I told them, for 10 years, this company that we started that standard of 10 gross, really, if you think about it, I think in 10 years, there was 5 times that we went under. And I think 2 of them were the COVID time. And 3 of them, we were like 9 and 8. It wasn't like it was like 2 or 7. It was like, you know what I mean? So we were, and since then, I mean, I would probably, and this is small Gloucester County. This is not metropolitan New York, Philadelphia. This is a small, really small market that has been able to, and now, like, you're like this, the standard now 20. It was 10 now because of, our growth and getting a bigger territory is 20. So the part that I did want to get into was the next part, right? So we become a team leader. We grow the company really fast, become number 1 in the market. I think when you were there, we were the largest by agent count, right? Or we were right there with the Philadelphia markets. And just so you know, we're still there. We're still, at top in agent count.
I watch, yeah.
And then I do remember the time where we had that conversation, the motivation, and we were like, I said, Matt, 5 years, everything went awesome. What are you doing? And, I'm sitting there like waiting for yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do a market center to do all this. And I'm like, sitting there just trying to figure out like what's the next plan for both of us. And you were like, I'm going to be the president of MAPS coaching.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I think that's in Austin. Like in my mind, I'm starting to run these things by like, I think that's in Austin. I'm in Washington Township. That doesn't align. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about that story and then and how you got into that and then where you are today there.
Yeah, quickly, before we had that conversation, you may or may not remember that I brought a few kind of proposals to how we could launch other things and do other things together. And you were aligned with those proposals. At the time, some of the other people that were in our world that were important to be aligned were not aligned with those proposals. And so I think what's important is and I've told a lot of people, I don't know if I would have left that world or that area. Honestly, I'm not sure, had everybody been aligned with what we were working on. Right. But when that misalignment occurred, right, not between the 2 of us, I actually had a better relationship with you, working with you every single day. I felt like I got better every day. I felt like I got to a point where you're absolutely the best leader that I've ever worked with or worked for in my career.
And don't forget, well, thank you for that. And don't forget, we actually had we had our own, our office was one because we both were so growth minded. We gave your office up. So you were like, I'm moving in. I'm like, oh, okay. And so
we had
one
my
neighbor.
Office because we recruited so many people that I didn't have space anymore. Right. So I remember and I feel that about all those things. So to me, the conversation, my thinking, like what happened there was, I'm like, wait a second, John and I are aligned, but not everyone is, right? And so I was 2 years into being in the leadership role, I earned the right to become a coach inside of our organization, right? Inside of MAPS, and based on numbers, based on performance. And I started coaching 23 team leaders while I was a team leader. Started with 15, quickly went to 23. So I was doing the job while I was coaching, a couple dozen people. And the CEO of that company started, Diana Kokoskis, and I started talking about what it might look like to be the first director of leadership coaches, move to Austin and take that on. That started to accelerate. We had a conversation where we couldn't figure out, that anymore. And I let you know, And
Yeah.
we had a 45-day resignation where we did, I think, everything as well as
Yep.
we could, right? And then I worked with my wife and her sales team for almost a year after that, right? Until we got to a number where Regina and my wife and I, could shut down what we were doing in Philadelphia, and we could sell everything and move across the country, and come to Austin. So 2018, I came to Austin and became the first director of leadership coaches for MAPS coaching inside of Keller Williams Realty International. And I did that for 3 years. And at the end of, it's interesting, right? I wanted to take the role that I told you, right? That was the intention of moving. Some information came out that was not going to be a step that was open to me. And so inside the company, there was this idea of being a millionaire coach, right? Gary Keller, who's a visionary for Keller Williams, right, in 2019 took back over as CEO of the entire company after a leadership change. And he, right, took back over to the CEO of MAPS, and for a short period of time. And he said, we should have a millionaire coaching model, right? We should have coaches that make that type of money every year. And thinking to myself, well, if I'm not able to do it through affecting change inside the building, I go back to, how can I affect change by modeling the behavior of success? This is what we want to do. Great. I'll find a way to become the coach that does that. I'll model that behavior for other people, and I'll lead by example by taking that on and figuring that out. Obviously, the word on your shirt today is another motivation for it. It's right. It's personal wealth. It's personal development. It's personal growth, right? To do that. But it was also the example of, hey, I coach other coaches now. I have all these other roles, right? If I can do it, I can model for them, and I can create a plan for them to do it. And again, so that was the steps we took, and in our company, right, in Keller Williams, because a lot of people listen to this, we talk about think $1 million, earn $1 million, which is gross, right? Net $1 million, right? And then give $1 million. So we passive income $1 million and give $1 million, right? So last year, I think we've thought $1 million for a while, but last year my wife and I checked off the next 2 boxes. So we grossed a net $1 million in coaching, and now we're talk about things I wish I would have understood more when I worked with you, right? Now we're investing in more real estate, right? And so
Yeah.
you could have probably taught us more and moved us faster, but you were doing everything you could. We didn't move fast enough back then, and you helped us lay a foundation of thinking about it and executing overall. And now we're investing more to go to the passive income step.
So you became a millionaire MAPS coach, which I think you were the first. Is that I
There's
know of?
been 3, right? All the other 3 have at the time were in a leadership position. So the first one that's done it that wasn't in an active leadership position, I think, right? Or maybe the second.
Okay. So all right. So now you're I don't know what you call it, mogul. I don't know, right? The MAPS mogul, right? You're doing that. You're doing investing. Title companies. I know your 30, 60, 90 is a great program that's like nationally recognized and everyone talks about it. You and Brian's program. So I guess for everyone listening, well, what's next now?
Well, for coaching, it's a great point. Coaching is there's a roadmap to a coaching world, right? And so if you think about that long term, you can kind of think about, mindset wise, if you think about the layout of, in many ways what you're doing, right? Write a book, launch a podcast, do the interviews, right?
Yep.
This is kind of like a lot of like the foundation of the coaching world to be able to create that. So what's next is more content. It's product based, and we're working on some of those right now. One of the really exciting things is kind of affiliated partnerships or sponsorship agreements, which for the first time we're actually in those conversations. That's something that I never thought of before, but we're starting to have that right now with some really interesting sponsors and affiliated partners potentially. And then we have some other title companies, right, that we're launching with a partner. And the other big thing is we're looking at having a kind of a dual 2 places that we live. So we live here in Austin, and we in
And where it's a second place.
In 2 weeks, we get on a plane to look at Regina's parents live in Seattle, and so we'll be looking at property for about 8 days, 7, 8 days, all over the state of Washington to look at a second location.
I thought they lived in Florida.
They did, right? And then they lived in Oklahoma City, and then they lived in right, and now they've put down what is their roots in Seattle, and so we're looking at. We've been up. We love the Pacific Northwest. It matches so many things that Regina really wants long term, and we look for. So we're looking at having a second house there. So that's kind of and then investing in more real estate. Now we've got to do the work on, as you taught me and laid a foundation for, but I was just too thick-headed to listen then. We've got to get our assets in order, right, and our investments in order to pay us passive income, so we have the ability to retire at some point in the future. And so that's the other piece we're working on.
I love that you already understand happy wife, happy life, because you were like what Regina wanted to go to
Yes.
Seattle, right? So that's where you go, right?
Yeah.
Hence is why I'm in Southern Florida.
Yeah.
My wife's
Great.
like, you're going, and we're not, and I can't even get her out of there now. I can't get her to leave Southern Florida. I was like, can we go back and like see everybody? Well, you go. I'll see you later. But now I understand why, because I don't want to leave either. So.
Yeah.
All right. So last question. If there's an attorney, doctor, or whatever, like a career like yours, I mean, which is, I think, a career that people take 8, 9, 10 years to obtain to be an attorney or a doctor, whatever, and they're sitting there and they're like, this is not what I want to do. What advice would you give them to kind of like say, like, don't be so hard on yourself, or, maybe there's other options. Like, what advice would you give that person sitting there like you were, 27, 28 years old in that career and not sure if that's what they want to do for the rest of their life?
I think you've asked great questions, and I think it's in alignment with what we talked about today. I think one is, do you have a mentor that's doing, if you know that's not what you want to do, or you think it may not be what you want to do you have a mentor, or are you pursuing anyone that is doing what you think you might want to do, right? And so are you talking to people that have that experience? Are you getting different experiences now? That's one thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is, for law specifically, and a lot of advanced degrees, there's law, for example, is often valued at a higher level, like we said earlier, outside of the legal profession than it is inside the legal profession, right? Mm-hmm. People go into clerkships and these things, and they get paid $40,000 a year to work 90 hours a week, right? And if they took their same mindset, their same knowledge, same skill set, same drive, and applied that to, again, I think we're biased, right? Real estate or real estate investing, or, right, other industries or other businesses, right, where they could scale and grow, I think they'd be highly successful. And so I the other thing I'd say to that is that, I think we make a lot of these decisions when candidly we're not really that mature. We make a lot of these decisions. I chose to go to, law school because someone called me. And when we go back from the story, it's not really that well thought out, right? People go into different professions because people said, maybe their parents have pressure, and that's a different question to answer, right? Or their family has pressure, or they decided as they were a young kid, hey, I always wanted that, but now they start to experience it, they don't. So I think it's allowing ourselves the grace to say, like, a lot of these decisions, like if we made it from a place of certainty and a place of being absolute and a place of being confident, right? Great. But you can change your mind like you change your shirt. You decided to do something and it didn't work out. Great. Cool. What can we apply? What's transferable? And where else can we go? We're in an industry that loves, people from all, walks of life and talent levels, because the opportunities there in so many different ways. But the cool thing is, today in 2023, my sister-in-law just got a job where literally the job offer says you can work wherever you want on the planet Earth. It is 100% remote. As long as you can be anywhere you want at any time, travel as much as you want. And she just took that offer yesterday, right? So it's so exciting for her. And you look at it and you go, like, that's the world we're in, right? We're in a world of AI. We're in a world of technology, world of different opportunities, world of remote work, right? So don't feel like you're trapped in something, right? If you want to pursue something else, there's more opportunity today than there ever has been. And if you're wondering what to pursue, real estate's a good one to look at.
I think real estate's okay. I highly recommend it as well. Well, Matt, listen, man, I will tell you that I'm proud of you. I continue to be your biggest fan. I probably talk about you every, I'm on tour like you are, going around teaching whatever all over. And every time, either someone knows you or someone reminds me of the stories we've had. And, whether it be around accountability, fierce conversations, mirroring and matching, all that stuff that you and I have been through so many times. And it just makes me smile when I hear, yeah, Matt's my coach, or Matt did this, or Matt's got a title company, or Matt bought this. I'm like, go ahead, brother, go ahead. So love you, appreciate you. Tell Regina I said hi, and thanks for being on today, man.
Thanks for the opportunity, John. You changed our life and you continue to do so. And, whatever we can do for you, we will.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you. I'm sure we'll catch up soon.